around the globe that will guide you to the next destination in your career. And now, your host, Katrina Brittingham.
Hello, hello, hello. This is Katrina Brittingham, and I am here with the echo. Oh, I think the echo is gone. With another episode of Career GPS Global Positioning Strategies, and I am your host. I have a wonderful, fabulous guest who will be here to help you with your finances during COVID-19 and providing some insight to help small business and entrepreneurs thrive even in this tough economy. Her name is Itika F. Watkins, and she is the Chief Financial Officer at Professional Bookkeepers, LLC. At Professional Bookkeepers, they specialize in bookkeeping, general ledger, maintenance, and workflow management and system design. They perform time-consuming, high-volume, data-driven transactions that oftentimes keep businesses from building business credit, obtaining business loans, maintaining results-driven dashboards for sales teams, and filing personal and business tax returns. They provide optimal bookkeeping services for people in their offices in Michigan. Virtually, she serves her clients and provides services nationally. Her clients range from individuals and small businesses in personal service. And she serves personal services firms, equity firms, staffing agencies, nonprofit organizations, and a host of other industries. Professional Bookkeepers is wholly owned by Itika, whose life work has been in accounting. She is born to a family of entrepreneurs and accountants, and now with a family of her own, she is watching her only and favorite daughter charter the same path. She is heavily supported by her husband, Corey, and church family. She desires only to help self-made entrepreneurs and small business owners dominate their businesses by making their numbers count. Please welcome Itika to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here with you, Katrina.
I'm so honored, too. Just to let people know a little bit, I met Itika about maybe like 2 years ago through Black Women Promote, and it was instant kismet for me. I can't speak to her, but it was instant kismet to me for her professionalism and her knowledge of accounting and her excitement and her exuberance of helping small business owners and entrepreneurs reach the heights that they need to get their numbers together so they can not just survive in business but thrive in business, and to reach what they want to reach personally and in their business, in their finances, and making sure that they are set up correctly financially so they can do what they need to do. Can you tell us just a little bit more about your business and what made you go into business?
So I've always had a love for numbers. I love math for as long as I can remember. I remember just doing math homework and different types of math, and knowing and understanding one fundamental thing, that you can arrive at an answer a number of ways, but no matter what the answer is, it will never lie. And so that is why I really, really aspire to work in accounting. I have a family that is, most of us are accountants or an entrepreneur of some sort, as you've already mentioned. But one of my favorite uncles, who's kind of stepped in the role as being my like dad since my father passed away, he more or less kind of groomed me for business and groomed me for this area. And so when I started in accounting, I actually started at the lowest tier of accounting, working specifically in certain niche parts of accounting, from accounts payable in corporate to account receivable in corporate, and then becoming a financial analyst. I've also worked in public accounting so I know the needs that small business owners actually do need to have in terms of accounting and financial services. It's just that it's a service that they don't always understand the value for, and a service that they can't always afford. And so my goal always is to provide as much value while I'm out here on different social media platforms so that people can get an understanding of the value of accounting. It's not just solely about having an accounting system. Most people think that because they have an accounting system that they actually have accounting. You really just have a system. You have a shell. You don't have accounting. And so just trying my best to help people and guide them in the right direction, because what I know about entrepreneurs is that they are resilient, and usually they know their thing. They know what they manufacture, what they make, the service that they provide, like the back of their hand. But when you talk about an area of their business that they don't know, they just simply don't know it, right? And so my goal is to just be a help to them so that they can continue being as great as they are, doing what they're doing, making jobs and contributing to the economy as I possibly can while I handle their back office.
Right. And you said one key thing is that entrepreneurs know what they know well. So whatever their profession is, they know that, and they can do that and deliver that. But sometimes people need help with the things they don't know to make sure that they're, financially sound, make sure that they're legally sound. This is one of the things that I also found as a business coach, where people are excellent at being the life coach or the project manager or the virtual assistants, but when it comes down to other things like the legal aspects, the financial aspects, and marketing, or the list goes on, they actually do need help for that. And like you said, sometimes that stuff can be very, very costly. So I know we have some questions, but I have some lead-in questions before we get to that, because we have questions about receiving funding and investing. What are some of the things that people need to do to make sure that they are prepared for running their business, first off, and making sure that they're financially sound before they start to look into getting investor funding?
That's a great question. So I think the premise of that is fundamentally understanding the tax structure that we have. A number of people start businesses as just self-employed. Usually it's from a hobby. It's something that they've done for a very long time. They just, ventured out and said, let me do this a little bit more. And it just turned into a business. It wasn't even something most people were even looking for. That's just how good they are. But usually they don't have a formation. In a lot of cases, they don't. It's why a lot of family-owned businesses oftentimes die, because the business structure isn't designed for it to be passed on beyond the owner's life. So the first fundamental thing that we have to begin to do as business owners is just to make sure that we have that legal structure in place, because the accounting sits on top of that. The bookkeeping and the accounting follows the lead of the tax structure. So bookkeeping fundamentally is the same, whether you're a limited liability company or whether you're a corporation. But sometimes there are some things that you do within that tax structure that might be categorically different. I think that another thing that people need to make sure that they are doing is that they're keeping their records and documentation. You may not have the system or the automation, the financial back office, as I call it, set up or designed, but you definitely can maintain your information. And the one thing that I've run into with most business owners is that they don't have, their information. They lack the information to support the deduction. And that's just dangerous altogether, because any deduction that you take, whether you're formed properly or not, can be challenged. And so a lot of people are missing the support that they need to be able to substantiate information that they're stating, potentially to a lender or to an investor or to an external factor. And so just organizing yourself in a way where you have the information that you need I think is fundamentally important.
And I agree with that. And so I know for me, what helped me to have all of that, aside from my background and everything, is having a plan and a business plan and having a financial plan included in that business plan. What is your advice for helping people to get that structure together and to get themselves organized?
So I've never believed that you have to have a business plan in order to launch your business if you're thinking about starting a business. However, there are so many components of the business plan that you actually need to slow down and think about. I mean, if you're thinking about sales, advertising, and marketing, it's all in that plan. And then from that information, you're deriving your projected results. You know, either you've actually performed it and been able to provide actual results, or you're projecting and forecasting what you want to do. So I think that having a business plan should be something high level that everybody should think about, but you don't have to have one in order to start.
Exactly. You don't have to have a complete business plan, but you do have to have the plan to have your finances together and to forecast and to know what your expenses are, up front. Because if you don't know what your expenses are going to be, that is a big driver for people too when they go down and haven't planned for the expenses and be able to forecast down the road. Borrowing COVID threw everyone for a loop. But there are natural ups and downs and highs and lows in business, and if you're not properly, able to forecast those things, you're not able to weather the storm financially when it's time for you to be able to weather the storm. So I definitely agree with that. Go ahead.
I was saying absolutely, and I think it's also important as a part of if you're not going to pull together a formalized business plan. And if you don't have a system to support your financial back office, then my question has to be, then how can you speak to your numbers? Because that's the main thing, being able to speak to your numbers, to know certain high-level things. It's not just enough to know, and I know that this is how we speak in terms of campaigning for business because it sounds good, but it's not enough to only know your revenue numbers. You also have to know certain key level operational costs that are vital to your business as well. Because some of us aren't just one-person shows. Some of us actually do have independent contractors and employees, and knowing also that burden is equally as important as knowing your revenue numbers as well.
And that's so true. As a business owner myself, bringing on contractors, that's an expense, and that's something that's going out the door, and I plan for that. But people also need to know, for the contractors, but even bringing on employees, because when you bring on employees, there are certain expenses that most people don't think about when it comes to having payroll costs, having payroll taxes, and things like that, and how they affect the business. Most people don't know because, especially coming from having it as your side and you're used to being in corporate, is that when you do taxes, you're now responsible for all of the taxes. Most people don't know that employers take on half of the cost of the taxes. So you're seeing the half on your side, but as an employer, you're taking the half, yes, out of the payroll, but then you have that other expense, which is like double the amount for the taxes. And the filing guidelines that come with that quarterly and things like that they have to manage. So these are one of the expenses that people generally don't think about when they're going into business, particularly if you started out as a solopreneur and now you're growing to the point that you need to bring on help, because you can start off as a solopreneur, but eventually, if you're doing the business right and everything, you're going to grow past being able to do things by yourself. And so it's having that plan for not just starting up, but a plan and a forecast for growth as well.
And I think that would be a key place if an individual who has a business has never thought about bringing an accountant on board or just consulting with one. as you get ready to move from one year to the next or from one quarter to the next, it would be, I think, ideal to at least talk to someone or consult with someone about creating that budgetary process for yourself or that forecasting process for yourself, because that definitely helps you to become more intimate with their numbers. A number of people weren't able on the downside to acquire PPP funding, even though most people campaign that, they have employees. A lot of times people didn't have employees. A lot of people consider themselves as employees, but really what they're taking are owner draws from their own company and pulling out the equity from their company. It's important that we become intimate with the information that is on those financial reports, to the point that we know what a bank is asking us for. Because a lot of the PPP requirement, even that most people have been trying to get, they weren't able to satisfy the documentation requirement. They didn't know, a lot of what was being asked. Even if they weren't able to provide the reporting, they couldn't come up with a calculation for what those costs could potentially be. I mean, this is how intimate we have to become with our information and knowing the difference. What are employees' salaries and wages? What are commissions? Do we have tips? Do you pay vacation for your people? Or do you give sick leave, parental, family, or medical leave? Do you have an allowance for dismissal of people or separation of employees? Right. I mean, all these things fall into that category when we're calling, PPP. But a lot of people weren't able to qualify for funding because they didn't have the necessary documentation and they didn't really know what they were looking for. But if you would have had an accountant on your team, they would have been able, even if you weren't able, to pull that information right away or say we just don't have it.
Right. And that is true. Wish that as far as the payroll protection, that most people didn't know how to apply for that, or, even like you said, they're drawing, from their bottom line with this, and knowing what you need to do to make sure that you are financially sound. One of the things that having a plan, a financial plan, or it's consulting an accountant, a financial person, is knowing the documentation that you need to have and have already established with your business so you can apply for those things. Because I applied for it, and I did get it because my background, and everyone knows, is that, I do have an accounting background. Even though I'm growing to the point where I'm going to be calling on Itika sooner or later, because, again, you get to the point where you're growing from a solopreneur. You can't do everything by yourself once you get to a certain level, even if you are, and this is one thing I tell people, even if you are a professional in a certain area, as the CEO of your company, leader of your company, there are certain things you're going to have to let go to be that CEO. And everything like that. So that's a key component in your financing, because one of the things that is key for entrepreneurs, and I found even for myself, is letting pieces go and trusting to let those pieces go, and everything like that, so you can have people do things. But that is one of the things. You have to have your stuff in line. You have people who were denied the payroll protection because they couldn't provide the proper documentation or know what they were supposed to have in order to qualify for it. And there's some people who got it and may not necessarily be using it in the form in which they do, in which they will have to pay back that loan. It's only forgivable if they follow certain guidelines. And I don't know if you're versed on that, and if you can speak on that, what the actual guidelines are, so people will know what those guidelines are in order to satisfy the forgiveness piece.
So primarily, it's a short-term grant that can become income to a company, and the primary purpose of it was for payroll. The primary purpose, and a lot of time, in a lot of cases, there was a calculation that was required to be provided that came up with the amount of money that you actually needed for payroll. Okay, They might have allotted a few expenses that are ordinary, that are common and necessary for the industry that you're in. But those expenses are few, far, and in between. So there are a number of people that probably have to pay back that income, and then, it will change how it was reported because the money came in from whatever bank, if they had to open up a new bank account, or if the money was deposited into their regular business checking account. But that money is no longer a short-term loan. That's how it had to be recorded, a short-term loan. It actually becomes income to them. So that calculation for how PPP funds were distributed was based upon what they determined as being the need for it. That's a calculation, a number that was given. And I know that's true especially for the banks. So if you weren't using that number, or whatever number you gave as your calculation to support, employees, to support, whatever the deductions were for compensation, local assessments on employee compensation, health benefits, insurance premiums, all those specific categories that are related to payroll, then it's a high probability that people may be paying that money back. They may have to report it as income and pay taxes on it.
Absolutely, and that's what people need to know, and that's why it's important, even when you are applying for these funds, to consult with an accountant, a financial professional, so they can let you know these things up front, so that you are not surprised or taken aback at tax time. So we're going to get ready to go to a commercial in a few, but it's going to be after the question, because once people are set up, like say everyone is set up, they receive the payroll protection and things like that, and now they're looking to get investor funding, which I see a lot around there, because now that people have this money, everyone's applying for grants. So how do people position themselves to receive funding, be it a business loan that they may want to stack on top of this, or grant funding, or angel investments and things like that?
So I think I look at investments a lot differently than maybe what most people do. Investments are heavily related to the health of your business, and you get that information directly from your balance sheet. So there are a couple forms, reports that will come directly from your own internal financial back office that will help you to become familiar with and intimate with your own numbers, and that would be your balance sheet and your profit and loss statement. And there's a clear distinction between the both of them. The balance sheet is going to let you know the health of your organization. If you have assets, if you're drowning in debt, and if you have any equity retained in your organization. So when an investor is looking at your business, they might take a snapshot of what you're doing as a snapshot in time for your income statement. But primarily, they're looking at the health of your organization. They're looking at the balance sheet, and they're looking to see, what are you totally committed to? Do you have a lot of loans on your balance sheet? A lot of obligations, and primarily because creditors are paid for first, right?
Right.
Well, creditors are paid first. So they're looking at that to see, overall, are you investable? And I think in terms of grant-related funding opportunities, I think a lot of that has also to do with just simply the messaging of the company, and that's a little bit different from accounting, but grants are given on a lot of times based upon also a business plan, your profitability, and also your balance sheet. But then the messaging is also something that's important too. But these are funds that aren't always required to be paid back. But one thing that is important that people need to know, especially nonprofit organizations, is that funders want to know what you did with their money too.
Right.
They want to know how you use their funds. What did the money go to? And quite frankly, they're not always interested in paying your people or keeping your place staff. They're looking to make sure that there's actually some mission in that, you know what I mean?
Right.
And some qualitative information in that as well.
Right. Right, exactly. That's exactly right. And we are going to take a quick 30-minute break, and we're going to come back to Itika to get some more sound financial advice to get us through COVID and beyond.
Award-winning resume writing or career coaching service to help build your professional brand and help you get hired faster? Then you need VentureReady.net. Let the professional staff guide you step by step to land you your perfect dream job. Why go anyplace else? We've helped many people just like you develop a strategy to help you succeed. That's VentureReady.net. Let us convince you by calling 1-888-712-4956. That's VentureReady.net. The complete package for any career path you take.
All right, we are back with Itika. That was our sponsor. For those who need some career services and career guidance through COVID, they do provide resume writing and also job search assistance. But we are back speaking with Itika about thriving as a business financially through COVID and beyond, because we will get past this and through this as we do everything else, and we want to make sure that when we come to the other side, we are surviving in business, thriving in business, not just surviving, not just barely making it. And some people, unfortunately, through this COVID and even sometimes even through payroll protection, may find themselves closing their doors or closing up shop because they are not financially prepared to do what they need to do. So I'm going to go into asking about deductions that people want to consider, start to consider and talk to a tax professional about for 2021, which, we're in August, you may as well say already. So we don't have that much of the year left, so it's time to start thinking about those deductions.
So I think, and you may have a number of listeners that also double as employees, which is perfect, because a number of people that are employees only are going to miss the opportunity to claim their homes as a business deduction, even if it's work related. There are some strict guidelines around that. It's also a number of people need to think about, in their industry, what's ordinary, necessary, and real. I say that all of the time. We're not really just simply looking for deductions. There's no voila at the end of it all, right? Because if you've been reporting every single month based upon what flows through your business checking account or checking accounts, your payroll account, your credit cards, your line of credit, all of this is activity that is happening. There's nothing really extra that's happening. There may be some different strategic ways that if you're thinking about, for many people who may have received grants or donations even, there might have been some strategy around capital purchases. Maybe this was the time to purchase a number of computers or a number of printers or different things of that nature, wherein you can structure your capital expenditures in a way that you can recover them over time, so that when you don't have anything really to purchase as a deduction, you'll have some form of a deduction to take. But we're really looking at those expenses that are ordinary, real, and necessary. And I think there's going to be big debate, if there was ever a debate before, about working at home, because I don't think even, and I'm praying that COVID does let up. I don't want to hear of any more deaths or anyone else getting COVID-19. I think this is horrible, but I think it's changed the trajectory for how we're going to be living for a couple of years. This may become our new normal in terms of how we're working, even if we're working full-time for someone else. So that means that my home base has now become a deductible place. And so I think that may be the argument for most. How am I using my home to gain greater deduction?
Right. And can you let people know how they can use their home to get greater deductions?
Absolutely. So for people who are in business who use their home primarily as your place of operation. This is where all of your administrative tasks happen. Everything that is related to your business comes to your home. And it has to be, in terms of home base, it has to be specifically earmarked. That's the best word I can think of for business activity. So it can't be a catch-all room. It can't be a room where the kids kind of play, kind of do homework, kind of eat. No, this is a room that you dedicated exclusively to conducting business because whatever the size of this room is in comparison to the square footage of your home becomes an allocated deduction as it relates to whether you're paying a mortgage, real property taxes, homeowner's insurance, even interest on your home, even a portion of utilities. These are direct costs related to your home that you get some form of percentage of a deduction for that. You're not showing this on your income statement per se, unless you've been doing this for a while. But if you've never deducted your utilities and your and the interest from your home and the real property taxes that you pay from your home, these are new that you're now showing. But it's based upon an allocated amount, and it becomes a percent of use of your home. The larger your home is in proportion to the square footage of the room that you're using is going to determine how large that percentage would be, 10%, 8%, 20%. That type of thing. And then you got to be careful with even some of the things that you may purchase in terms of the home. You're not, all your janitorial supplies to clean your home are not now supplies for your business. You just have to be very, very careful about it. I mean, you can claim a lot on your tax return, but you have to be able to support it. And I always remind people that when you're a business owner, and the bookkeeping is happening for your business, you're not just thinking about deductions. You're also thinking about how can you prove your deductions? How can you substantiate those deductions? Because they're always challengeable. They can always be called into question.
Yes, they can. And that's something that I do share with my clients, too, that is one thing to, like you said, say this is an expense, but you have to prove that it's an expense for your business. Particularly when you're working from home, because people are transitioning to working from home. My business was set up specifically from home and virtually. It was virtual from the onset. And so that's something that they even ask you on the tax forms. As far as the percentages, they actually do get into the nitty-gritty of asking you the percentage of certain things, from the maintenance on the home. Like if you do maintenance on the home, they want to know, was that maintenance done on your home office, or does your home office come into that? And those things are deductible, but you have to have proof of these things. And that's where, like you said, having that documentation too, but also knowing what you can deduct and what you can't deduct, and what is considered reasonable for having that deduction. And they will come back, because they've come back to me to provide proof of that. And because I had the documentation and things were calculated correctly, it was just like pretty much no news is good news. Once they come in and they are satisfied, they are satisfied. But if they don't, they're going to start to dig deeper, and then that's cost and expense that you may have to actually pay back because you have over deducted.
Absolutely, even down to your cell phone. So whatever you're using primarily for business, if you've never thought about inquiring with the carrier of your phone or the carrier of your internet services to see if you can get those types of services definitely in the business name, you should. I mean, the documentation to substantiate that will probably be your determination letter from the IRS in terms of being an employer, or providing them with your EIN number, or some article of incorporation from your state or the registrar with your state. something of that nature. But I would definitely see if it's something that I can do, because your phone expenses can definitely be challenged.
Yes, most definitely. And speaking on that, because that just popped into my mind too, can you speak on the importance of, especially for solopreneurs, because a lot of times this gets mixed up, of having a dedicated business account, checking and savings for your business. Even though you're a solopreneur, the importance of having a business account.
So I always stress to people that I speak with about tax structure to be structured in some way. Minimally, if you don't understand the tax code, limited liability corporation, or to be defined as a limited liability corporation operating in your state, would give you some form of protection. As a self-employed individual, there are no protections. You're buying everything in your name. Your assets are in your name. Your liabilities, your credit is all in your personal name. So if for some freak chance you did not evaluate your performance using your profit and loss statement, ignored your balance sheet and all those different things, and your company was slowly going out of business, and you were no longer able to pay your creditors or your lenders, guess who they're going to pursue? They're going to pursue you personally. And then the danger that most people don't seem to understand as a limited liability corporation, and acting as a limited liability corporation, is the fact that you want to make sure that you're also treating your business as a separate entity from yourself. A lot of times, the number one thing that I see that sole proprietors and LLC type of businesses do is that they still commingle their funds. So everything that you're fighting for as a protection as a limited liability company, you no longer are isolating yourself because you're still commingling your funds. So you can still be challenged or pursued by creditors, lenders. So that would definitely be the one thing that I would do, would be to create a tax structure for myself. Sit down with a tax professional or an accountant. Sometimes they double as both, to find out which one provides the best tax structure for you in terms of being a business. And then the bookkeeping will follow that. And then it's always important to establish, business accounts, checking account, saving account, for the purpose of being audited. If you're ever audited, and beyond that, it's just a business, so it should stand alone by itself. But if you're ever audited as a sole proprietor, then you have to open up your whole purse. You have to open up your whole purse to, what's going on personally in your life, and it all comes into question. And it's just an unnecessary conversation to have if you don't need to have it. Exactly.
And so with that, having your tax structure set up and everything like that, and having the accounting sitting with that, people have all kinds of accounting software, accounting tools for themselves that they use. But do you have a specific software that you suggest for people to have?
I do, and I call myself a brand ambassador for Intuit because I love their product so much. I mean, I've worked with different products, and the licensing itself is at the enterprise level, and the renewal is $15,000. This is a software solution that is very, very affordable and economic for small business owners, especially if you're making less than $35 million a year. You're not at that enterprise level, And so I really, really always advocate for QuickBooks because, number one, it dominates in the United States for sure. It is a technology that is in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about having an IT person to hire to protect your proprietary information, or running out of space, what is it, Terra drives and all those different things to, to keep your proprietary information. All your information is hosted directly in the cloud, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about running out of space. It grows with you as a company. So even if you start with just the most basic level with just one license, you can always grow and add on licenses if you need to for more people to work within your system. So that's always important. And then they have such, I call it beautiful reporting that is needful for you. They have business performance reporting. They have customer type reporting. They have down to the product. If you want to know, I don't want to know the customer. I want to know the products that I'm selling. Down to, if you have project level reporting and you want to report your books by project. I mean, it's just so intense how you can build upon this type of this software. But it's going to require skill if you're not an accountant, or hire an accountant.
And that's so true. And I when I saw that, I was like, yes, because I use Intuit software as well for the same reasons. The fact that it can grow with you, and that's something that you have to forecast too. Because one of the big expenses for people is that they get software, they get different tools. Because one of the things that happens when you become an entrepreneur, everybody wants to sell you everything. And either people get something that's too big for them, something that they cannot maintain, or they get something that won't grow with them. And so then now, after maybe a year or two, or depending on how fast you grow, you're having to invest in another software. You may have everything set up in there, and the move to the new platform and things like that. I mean, you mentioned Teradata, and I worked in that in corporate, and trust me, that is not something that a solopreneur wants to get into. It takes a lot of skill. It takes a lot of time. It takes someone who really knows that stuff to do it. But if you have a system like Intuit, it has things that is really user-friendly and everything like that. Like you said, and price is always a premium when you're paying for different expenses, and it is the most that I've found reasonable software that gives you all the bells and whistles that you need for your business. So I do love that software. I never thought of myself as a brand ambassador for them, but that is something I do suggest for people to use, is the Intuit software, the QuickBooks, the software for self-employed individuals, which gives you some tailored things for people who are self-employed and solopreneurs and everything like that for business, and everything like that for managing their business, and things like that. And the support that you give, the reports are awesome. I've had to pull down reports for different reasons and different things for my business financially, and all of that is at pretty much the tip of your fingers. Storage also is a thing of premium, where you have that unlimited storage, and it's included in the price of your package. You're not paying for storage separately, which a lot of people find themselves into having to pay for storage with different things because they just don't have the proper tools that they need for their business.
Absolutely. And they've built it in a way that makes the relationship between the business owner and their accountant a lot more productive and effective.
Yes.
Features like Payroll is something that can be turned on right within the system. Obviously, it's an added cost, but it can be turned on right inside of the system. And you can get all the reporting that was required of the PPP documentation directly from there. You don't have to go to a third-party source. And there are some pretty good third-party sources, but you can get the reporting that you need directly from the system. If you needed timesheet management, a lot of people are building staffing agencies, and so you may need timesheet management to know how long it's taken someone to perform projects within your company, even at the independent contractor level. And what I also love about it is that a number of people have started their businesses not really knowing the inner workings of them, and so now they have a hodgepodge of information. What QuickBooks does allow for people to do, if you have someone that can work with you, is to integrate these systems into your back office. Now, it's not primary information necessarily for your accountant, and that could be at industry level. It could be your CRM. You have builders that have their own CRMs. You have designers that have their own CRMs, and that's just your touch point for your customers and your lead generating tool, right? Maybe you're doing an email from, and then you're also able to invoice from there. Well, if you like that platform, you don't have to necessarily do away with it, but what happens is that information is able to feed directly into your QuickBooks system, so that you're not just receiving money and there's a question as to why you're receiving it. Is it a loan? Did you loan your company money? Who's paying, this money? And so I love the fact that it can take a hodgepodge business with all these different applications and integrate into one place. And you do have to know how that works within that system, because it can be complex. And that can go from anything: your CRM, your point of sale, your time tracker, your payroll. If you have a third-party payroll, all of it can integrate usually into QBO.
Yes, I love that. I'm looking, because we're almost at the top of the hour, and I did promise some people some tips for their personal finances, because even in business, you have your business expenses, but you have your personal finances too. So do you have any advice for our people for their personal finances amid COVID to get themselves together for what we're going through now and beyond?
The biggest personal finance tip that I could give anyone that they'll reject and say, boo, it's probably making sure that you change your W-4 form to what it actually needs to be. I have met, and I've complained about it openly, I've met a number of people just as new tax clients in the year of 2020 that many of them, I gave so much bad news, because there are a number of people that are not taking out enough withholding, and they work a job and they have a business. And so essentially you already are expecting to make a level of income from your business, but when you're on payroll for someone else, you never should come out owing. It's not even designed that way, because you're paying your tax every pay period. And so what that means to me is that there are a number of people that are claiming 7, 8, 9, or maybe even be exempting themselves from tax. So now you're living off of all that you earn, and you don't have a strategy for a tax bill that is due April the 15th. And if that money is due April the 15th and you don't have it and you're not ready to pay it, it is accruing interest, penalties, and fees by the day. And that's one of the worst bills that you could ever have. So my first tax strategy would be sit down with your tax professional and find out, what should I be claiming minimally. And then that may structure how we're living. That may mean, right now we're in quarantine. That may mean no pizza. That may mean no dinners out for a couple, until we get ourselves situated. But I'm telling you, I see something happening, and it's not good. And it is that people are living off of all that they earn. If you have to live off of all that you earn at a job, it's time to change a job. Pray and move on. Because that's the worst situation that you could ever be in, is owing the IRS.
Yes. Yes. Um, I tell people, even when I work through corporate, I actually put in extra because they have a line on your W-4 where you can have extra coming out of your paycheck to go to your taxes. And so, you have some people who will say, no, this is bad. It's like giving the government an interest-free loan. But for me, it was a protection and a fail-safe because there have been people that I have known who where the proper taxes were not taken out of your paycheck. And so what people fail to realize, if your employer does not take out enough taxes, that's not on the employer. That's on you because it's your taxes.
Mhm. And I never have understood it. But it is what is happening. People have changed their W-4, and sometimes it's just an innocent thing. They changed their W-4 because they knew they had something that they needed to pay. It was going to cost a little bit more money, and so they changed their W-4, and they just completely forgot to change it back. Then by the time they tax professional in the next year, they haven't taken out enough tax. And so here it is that you have this situation brewing. You want to leave your tax professional. You don't think that they're finding you enough deductions. You didn't owe the year before. And so you have all these things going on when really we created this. We created this when we changed our W-4 form. The second thing is that stop touching. If you're going to use instruments, financial instruments like 401ks, stop taking from them.
Mhm.
They're not designed for that. And so when we take from them, we're paying a penalty on money that we're actually saving.
Right.
And that penalty can be huge.
Yes.
And then if you live in a state wherein there are taxes, then you're being penalized by the federal government and then the state that you live in. And that's all tax you weren't even thinking about in an immediate situation.
Mhm. That's absolutely it. And it's like basically you're paying so much on that money to use it. And so you really have to count the cost of that money that you're using, because it's like especially if you're underage, you have the penalty for early withdrawal, you have the taxes that's coming out, and everything on top of it, and you have to think about, is it really worth it to even take that money? And us as financial people, we're like, no, it ain't worth taking all of that money from you. And they take it up front, a portion up front, and then they take a portion when you file your taxes.
Absolutely. And so it wasn't enough the time that what you gave them. And that's just with the federal government. That's just with the IRS. That has nothing to do with the state. And so you're sitting there with your tax professional. You're thinking they're not giving you the best deductions. They have, I didn't owe anything the year before. I don't know how this could be. Well, it is because of this. And so I think also having a relationship with your accountant or your tax professional throughout the year. Don't make it a one-time thing. If you're having a baby, if you're getting married, if you're buying a new home, call your accountant and find out, how is this going to affect me? I'm about to get married to somebody. And, what does that mean for me?
Right.
In terms of do I have to file with him, or can I, have the conversation? To me, there's never a question that is dumb. I don't know it, so for me, it's all smart. Just ask the question.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I tell people there are no stupid questions because I'm always the question girl because I want to know. So definitely ask those questions.
Exactly.
You were saying?
Help us sister. I don't know.
Yes, definitely. Say, I don't know. And you know what? The thing about it is, and I'm going to actually have to start wrapping up, is that, there's no such thing as pride when it comes to your personal finances and when it comes to your business finances. Because sometimes people think, oh, well, if I ask this question, then people will think that I don't know. Well, you don't know. And you can't do better if you don't know better. So you want to make sure that you ask those questions to your tax professional. But we are at the top of the hour. I cannot believe it. The hour always goes by so fast. But as a closing to our people, can you let people know how to contact you so they can get this excellent business advice and this assistance?
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you all for tuning in. Hopefully we've said something tonight that changes your perspective on accounting and accountants in your business. I am Itika Watkins. The name of my company, headquartered out of Michigan, is Professional Bookkeepers. We are a firm of bookkeepers, and that's what we do. We work with other business owners. You can find me on all social media platforms at The Bookkeeping Strategist. And if you're looking to have a conversation with me directly, then you're connecting with me at bit.ly/The Bookkeeping Strategist. Get on my calendar and let's talk about your business.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate having you. I was so excited about having you on, and you know it. I was bursting at the seams for you to come on because I knew there are some things that people just absolutely need to know on a regular, but especially through COVID. It's so much going on in the economic climate and people's personal and business finances that I wanted to get you on here for your expertise to help our audience out. Just get themselves together and make sure that they're sound. So when it comes to the end of the year or next year, this time when they're filing, they won't have any major surprises, and also to get you out there so people can come and see you, because a lot of times people say, okay, I need to do this, but they want someone that they can trust. And I know I personally sign off on your services, and I do have to mention the Executive GPS Conference, which is now virtual. It was supposed to be in-person event, but due to COVID, we have moved virtually, and it is October 30th and 31st, where you will get more information on running a business, business structures, and everything that you need, financial advice, and things like that for your business, for startups and for people who are in business. And you can register for the conference at www.theexecutivegps.com. And we thank you for joining us on this show, and we will see you next week.
GPS. Join us next Wednesday for more insights from career experts and thought leaders from around the globe who will help you reach the next destination in your career. To be a guest on the show, contact us at info@ventureready.net or call us at 888-712-4956.